She said she found someone who understands her better, but I had already canceled the wedding, sold the house, and watched her new man lose everything. I am 34, I was engaged to Emily, who was 28, and we were only 6 weeks away from our wedding. Everything looked perfect from the outside. The venue was already booked, the invitations were sent, the honeymoon was paid for, and we had even put a down payment on a house that we planned to move into right after the wedding. To our friends and families, we were that couple everyone admired. People always told us we looked so happy together, that we were lucky to have each other, and that we seemed to have it all figured out. For a long time, I believed that too. Emily and I had been together for 3 years, and during that time, she became the person I thought I could trust more than anyone. She had a bright, outgoing personality that drew people in. She was always the life of the room, always making plans, always keeping our social life busy. I was more reserved, more of a planner than a talker, but she used to say she liked that balance, that I gave her stability and she gave me energy. That was how I believed our relationship worked. But then, around 2 months before the wedding, I started to notice changes. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just stress. She began working late more often than usual, and at first I didn't think much of it. Work gets busy, life gets stressful, and with a wedding coming up, it made sense that she might be overwhelmed. But slowly, those late nights turned into a routine that felt wrong. She grew moody, snapping over small things that never bothered her before. And then there was the phone, her constant companion. She carried it everywhere, never leaving it out of sight, always face down, always silent. When I asked about it, she brushed me off with quick excuses. I'm tired, or it's just wedding stress. But my gut was screaming at me. Something wasn't right. I noticed the new clothes she suddenly owned, clothes I had never seen her buy. I noticed the long errands that didn't add up. I noticed the coldness that had slowly replaced the warmth we once shared. Deep down, I already knew what was happening, but I wasn't ready to admit it. I kept telling myself that no one would cheat while planning a wedding. Who would do that? But sometimes, the truth doesn't wait for you to be ready. So I stayed quiet. Instead of confronting her, I paid attention. I watched patterns form. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she was working late. Her phone was guarded like it held state secrets. And then one evening, I saw a message pop up on her screen before she snatched the phone away. I didn't see all of it, but I saw enough. Someone was calling her beautiful, and it wasn't innocent. In that moment, my heart sank, but my face remained calm. I knew. I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I didn't demand answers. I did something different, something she didn't expect. I quietly reached out to a close friend of mine who worked in tech, someone I trusted like a brother. Within a few days, I had the proof I needed. Emily was having an affair. The man was older, divorced, someone she saw almost every day at work. The details hurt, but they didn't matter as much as the fact that she had betrayed me. I remember sitting in our apartment that night after finding out, just staring at the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I just felt this strange, heavy stillness. I had spent years with this woman, built plans around her, trusted her completely, and all the while she had been smiling at me about flower arrangements while sneaking around behind my back. That was the night I made a choice. I would not give her the reaction she wanted. She probably expected me to explode, to beg her to stay, or to collapse in front of her. Instead, I decided I would take control of the ending. And then came the moment that made everything crystal clear. A week later, while going through our accounts to stay on top of bills, I noticed something strange. There were transfers from our joint wedding fund into her personal account. At first, I thought maybe she had just forgotten to tell me about paying a vendor. But when I cross-checked against our planning documents, the numbers didn't match. These weren't payments to caterers or florists. They were payments for herself. Shopping, online purchases, thousands of dollars taken from the money we had saved together. That was the final straw. Not only was she cheating on me, she was also stealing from me. And at that moment, something snapped into place. I didn't want to argue, I didn't want drama, and I didn't want to waste months fighting with lawyers or crying over her decisions. I wanted my freedom, and I wanted it clean. So while Emily was out picking centerpieces, I started my own kind of wedding planning, not for a marriage, but for an exit. 3 weeks before the wedding, I quietly canceled everything. The venue, refunded. The photographer, refunded. Even the caterer, who could have easily refused, gave me most of my money back after I explained the situation privately. Bit by bit, the wedding fell apart behind the scenes, and Emily knew nothing. She was still talking about flowers and dresses while I was unraveling everything. The next step was the house. Emily loved to brag about our first home together. She told friends she chose the paint colors, showed people pictures, even talked about where her home office would be. But the truth was simple: the house was in my name alone. She hadn't contributed a single dime to the down payment or the mortgage approval. She was just picking paint swatches. I decided she wouldn't be moving into that house. I contacted a realtor and told them I wanted it sold fast, even if it meant losing a little money. Within days, I had a buyer. The papers were signed and the deal was closed, and Emily didn't have a clue. Every night, I came home and listened to her talk about the wedding. She'd complain that I wasn't helping enough with the details, and I'd just nod, knowing that everything she thought was coming was already gone. I wasn't driven by bitterness anymore. I was driven by clarity. She thought she held the upper hand, that she could sit me down and break my heart with a rehearsed speech about finding herself or falling in love with someone else. What she didn't realize was that by the time she opened her mouth, I would already be free. And then came the day. A quiet Sunday afternoon, sunlight filtering through the blinds. I knew it was coming because she had accidentally left her email open on our laptop a few nights earlier. I had seen a draft email to her boss, the same man she was having an affair with, telling him that she was ready to leave me, that she wanted to finally be free once the wedding was off. She even wrote that she planned to have the talk with me on that very Sunday. She thought she was about to crush me. She thought she was the one holding the cards. But she had no idea I had already pulled every card off the table. She sat down across from me with that practiced look of sadness on her face and said softly, "I don't think this wedding is right. I found someone who understands me better." I leaned back, calm, and simply said, "Already taken care of." After that night at the gala, my life took a turn I never expected. The very same people who had once looked at me as nothing more than the charity case husband were now quiet, their faces pale as they realized the weight of the prenup they had all mocked years ago. They had laughed when my wife's family convinced her to push for that agreement. They thought it was their safety net, something to protect her from me if our marriage fell apart. But now, that same piece of paper was the exact thing that protected me from them. Suddenly, the power shifted, and it was in my hands. I could feel the eyes of every guest at the gala burning into us, whispers filling the room, and my wife's fake smile crumbling bit by bit until there was nothing left but shock and fear. I didn't say another word that night. I didn't need to. My silence spoke louder than anything I could have said. When the gala ended, I walked out alone. The cool night air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt free. I remembered all the moments I had sat through insults from her mother, the times her sisters rolled their eyes at me, and how she herself never defended me. Every comment about me being a charity case had cut deep, but I had swallowed that pain because I loved her. I thought love was enough, but that night showed me it never had been. I was just a tool to them, someone they could use, someone they thought would always stay quiet. But not anymore. In the following weeks, my wife tried to reach out to me. She called. She sent messages. She even showed up at my office once, tears running down her face, begging for a second chance. But her words felt empty, because I knew something she didn't think I had found out. She had been preparing to leave me for months. I discovered her emails to a lawyer, her private messages to her mother about starting fresh without me. She thought the divorce would end with her holding all the cards. That was why she had the nerve to announce it publicly at the gala, confident she'd walk away with everything. She wanted to humiliate me, to break me in front of everyone. But life has a way of flipping the script, and that's exactly what happened. When the divorce papers were finally signed, I walked away with 75% of everything we had built together. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because that was the agreement she had pushed for. All those years ago, they had laughed at me, saying, "At least if he ever leaves, you'll be safe." But in the end, that safety net became my shield. And her family? They vanished. The same people who once crowded our house on holidays, eating my food, sitting at my table, and talking down to me, suddenly disappeared from my life. None of them called. None of them showed up. It was almost like they had never been there at all. And honestly, that was a blessing. As for me, I rebuilt my life from scratch, but this time on my own terms. I poured my energy into work, into traveling, into discovering who I was without their voices in my ear. Slowly, I learned to breathe again. I learned to laugh again. And I learned that my worth was never tied to how much I could give to someone who only saw me as a placeholder until something better came along. The night she laughed while announcing our divorce could have broken me. Instead, it became the moment that freed me. Now, when I look back, I don't feel anger. I feel gratitude, because losing her showed me the power of walking away with my head held high. She tried to tear me down, but in the end, she was the one left standing alone, facing the consequences of her own choices. And me? I found peace.